final battle of the Tournament of Power has now reached its climax as Goku battles Jiren at full power while mastering Ultra Instinct and further solidifying their dominance, as only a minute and a half remains until the conclusion of the Tournament of Power, with Frieza having to lurk in the background. The final battle between two of the strongest mortals all of history, and with both of their universes on the line, is finally at hand, as both Goku and Jiren battle for supremacy and finding out which one of their universes is going to be the last ones to survive. What is going on, Dragon Ball fans? Welcome to my Dragon Ball Super episode 130 breakdown review entitled The Greatest Showdown of All Time. The ultimate battle begins, leading into next week's final episode of Dragon Ball Super, that being episode 131. And what a preview we've gotten to see the end of the Tournament of Power and finally getting the reveal of Frieza and having the conclusive battle be told in the form of Goku and Jiren's battle, which is going to be absolutely amazing in finding out what they have planned for the end of Dragon Ball Super. And again, if you guys are new to this channel, don't forget to go on ahead and smash that subscribe button and turn on all notifications. That way you guys can be notified whenever a brand new video is posted onto this channel to be up to date with all latest news, information, and updates. Hashtag Dragon Ball Squad, as I will go on record in saying that this was the most shocking episode I think that Dragon Ball Super has ever produced in its entirety, from Dragon Ball Super episode 1 up until Dragon Ball Super episode 130. This was unquestionably one of the most intense, brutal, and of course shocking episodes ever, because of the idea that not only Goku and Jiren had such a ferocious battle as they were engaging with each other, in the story development having to build up on Jiren's backstory, and going back and revisiting Jiren's childhood and seeing more or less what he's fighting for, and questioning the integrity of Goku and asking him more or less about what he's fighting for, what even are allies, what even are friends, in attacking the bleachers, which was completely shocking, but also seeing 17 return, which pretty much shocked the entire community, and the idea that everyone originally thought that 17 was dead until at the very end, once Goku pretty much went crumbling into the void as a result of Jiren's fight. We get to see how Frieza emerges, and then out of nowhere 17 emerges and assisting Goku and allowing him to survive that much longer. But at the very end, this episode unquestionably left so many people in utter disbelief. Now, before we go on ahead and dive any further into this episode, I do want to go on ahead and acknowledge the aesthetics and the artistic value that this episode introduced us to, and the idea that this episode looked absolutely fantastic in terms of animation, and having to pay attention to detail. Every bit of this episode, I think, in my opinion, was very well put together and very well designed. And actually, Anime AJ is the one that breaks down the animation aspect of Dragon Ball Super bit by bit, so I highly encourage you guys to check him out as well. But the overall fight feel between Jiren and Goku in this episode, I think, definitely fit the agenda in having to tell that story of David versus Goliath, and having to see the once beaten down hero having to come back against the opposition here having to be Jiren. But the only difference was we saw Jiren be the one this time that had his back up against the ropes and being pushed behind by Goku, which at the same time I truly did have a problem with, because Jiren's build in the entire Tournament of Power so far has been a tad bit confusing, and the idea that during the entirety of this tournament, the whole time since the beginning of the Tournament of Power, Jiren wasn't even close in more or less using his full power up until this very point, which goes to further solidify the mortal that Whis was referencing way back in Dragon Ball Super, when he mentioned that there was even a mortal out there that a Hakaishin cannot defeat, and that mortal still stands the test of time in being Jiren. And we saw that display in power as he fought Goku. However, that further also goes to show how broken Jiren is, because Jiren this entire time was not only able to keep up with Goku, but also enduring everything Goku delivered in terms of execution, which also begs the question, why give Goku Mastered Ultra Instinct to begin with? Why would you give him the imperfected version of Ultra Instinct only for him to later perfect that power and mastering it against Jiren, just for him to get foddered in the end? That doesn't make any sense to me, and with that, if it's not broken, don't try to fix it. So they ought to have preserved that power for a later time, instead of giving Goku the mastered technique so quickly just for the sake of selling toys. I'm not a hater of Goku, I'm not a hater of Jiren, I'm not a hater of Dragon Ball, but it's just common sense in the idea that I understand that Goku is your typical Shonen Jump hero in breaking his limits and being able to overcome all the odds put in front of him. However, this time around, it didn't really fit the agenda in Goku having to master this power, only for him to essentially become the victim in the end. As we go into Dragon Ball Super episode 131 and its preview, which we will cover in the predictions video, we come to the understanding that now more so than ever, this is going to be a crucial time for Universe 7, and since Goku essentially right now has burned right through his power, what more does Universe 7 have left to offer, especially now that Jiren is at full power? However, I do also want to address the issue that so many people had in the idea that the Tournament of Power was going to end with one of the 3 results having to occur involving Goku, Jiren, or Frieza having to win, which of course many other people originally thought that there were going to be other winners in the tournament, perhaps Vegeta, Gohan, Toppo. Many people in the fandom had different opinions as to how they felt about this tournament, but having to go as far back as July in dating back to the Super Dragon Ball Heroes trailer, it was originally alluded in the idea that at some given point Frieza was going to work with Goku, and I told you guys this back during July when the Super Dragon Ball Heroes aired, in the fact that Super Dragon Ball Heroes has a tendency in ruining a lot of things for the Dragon Ball Super anime and revealing basically some things that aren't supposed to be revealed a tad bit early with Goku Black, Zamasu, and then we had Ani Laza, and further spoiling the events of Super. And of course this was pretty much foreshadowed way back in July, and it finally is going to happen in of course next week's episode. But I do want to say one thing, I think it's kind of dumb at this very point for them to give Goku Mastered Ultra Instinct just for him to have solely 1 episode, if not 2, purely dedicated in showcasing the form in its entirety. But the only downside is this may be the potential final time that we might end up seeing Mastered Ultra Instinct in the form of Dragon Ball. Depending on whether or not they want to come back following the events of Super or not is completely up in the air right now. There is no confirmation of Super having to return or for any other Dragon Ball series to spawn following Super. However, I am a tad bit disappointed in seeing Mastered UI only be featured once, because for me, that reminds me back when we first got Battle of Gods and seeing the execution of Super Saiyan God one time during the fight with Beerus and never again in the anime until of course the Tournament of Power. We haven't really seen transformations or forms like Super Saiyan God so often in the anime as opposed in the manga, so to me this is a tad bit disappointing in the fact that we're only going to get to see this power one time be showcased now and potentially never again, depending on if they're going to bring back Dragon Ball Super or even potentially spawning a new series having to continue from it. But seeing Mastered Ultra Instinct Goku in action was pretty remarkable in the idea that we all want to see what Goku can do against Beerus now, and seeing where he stands and being compared to a god of destruction and various other things having to follow. But this fight I would say was brutal in the fact that Jiren, despite having to be outclassed, still managed to hold his own in delivering as much as he could to push Goku back even far enough in causing him to struggle, even if it was for a tad bit. I really did enjoy how Jiren for the most part was relative to Goku, but then again it's like Mastered Ultra Instinct, the state of power to where not even the gods can obtain, and Jiren was able to go toe to toe with that in knocking Goku down and pushing Goku to the edge of his breaking point. That to me didn't make sense. But I'm gonna be honest, as much as I enjoyed seeing the return of Android 17, we all have to collectively ask the question, how in the world did Android 17 survive that? Is it good to see 17 back in the tournament? Yes. Does it make sense? No, because didn't they confirm that 17 pretty much self-destructed in being destroyed during the engagement with Jiren's blast? So how in the world did 17 manage to not only survive, but also remain undetected in the ring? Granted, his ki cannot be felt because he is an android, is the fact that he is an artificial human, so he cannot display his ki, nor can you understand where he is because he doesn't emit the same amount of ki that a regular mortal would emit. However, I am very curious as to why they decided to do this in bringing 17 in. But not only that, we get to see Golden Frieza and Android 17 side by side, as now we go back to square one. Android 17, Golden Frieza, and Mastered Ultra Instinct Goku versus Jiren. Now the only thing is, I'm not entirely sure if Jiren can go back into using his full power, because in this episode he was defeated by the the very end, Goku had all the opportunity in the world to defeat Jiren, in which I do believe if the opportunity were to be presented, I think Goku would have done it. I think that Goku would have ultimately have destroyed Jiren and knocking him out the ring. However, once again, going back to the Battle of Gods concept, Goku ran out of the form right before he was able to finish the job, which is very cliche, but traditional Dragon Ball, and the fact that this always tends to happen right before the be-all end-all fight reaches its conclusion. Some fuckery has to happen to where someone actually ends up getting screwed out of something, and that somebody in this case ended up being Goku. And what I really enjoyed here was seeing Jiren's development as a fighter during this battle, because as Jiren kept fighting Goku, if you guys paid close attention, we see how he was more or less the aggressor. He was very angry, he kept thinking about his past, and I really did enjoy that, because this entire tournament Jiren's been cool, calm, and collected, keeping his emotions to himself, and in this battle he was pretty much releasing all of his emotions onto the surface, which I personally enjoyed, especially when he fired off the blast at the spectator seats aiming at Universe 7, and that's what triggered Goku in beating Jiren down and using the Kamehameha, which I enjoyed, because as we see Jiren with his arms out getting engulfed by this Kamehameha, you can hear him scream in utter agony, and even after he was defeated, he bowed his head in knowing the fact that he took a fat L from Goku, and there's no question in my mind that Goku would have attempted to ring him out. If anything, if Goku had the opportunity right then and there, he would have, but traditional shonen, we get to see how Goku goes down, but he is ultimately saved by Frieza in 17 after Belmont gives Jiren the order to ring him out, which I think was pretty cool in seeing how Jiren acknowledged Goku in being this mortal that he's never come across before. He's never had to face anybody other than perhaps maybe his angel or his own Hakaishin that can match him in power. And here comes Goku, who is from a different universe that's able to rival him in terms of feats, and if anything, being able to supersede him. That's where I feel like the tides turned for Jiren, and he pretty much nodded his head in defeat, but by the very end, just as Goku had the lead, he ultimately ended up losing it after his form burned out. However, I do want to go in ahead and give huge credit and thanks to all of the animators of this episode, which includes Naiki Ote, we have Shida, Yuki Osada, Kenji Miyoma. So we had so many people behind this episode, and I'll be honest, in the beginning, things looked a tad bit wonky to me. I really wasn't too fond of the early animation. However, as soon as we kicked into overdrive into the middle and the ending of the episode, things really got intense, and I really did enjoy how the animation picked up, the art style picked up. Artistically speaking, it was very good from the middle portion all the way up until the very end. However, I think the biggest shock and the biggest question we all have is, how in the world is 17 even alive, and are we gonna end up leaving this off on a cliffhanger, or is something else bound to happen for the final episode of Dragon Ball Super? But in the end, I would like to get your thoughts in the comment section below. What are your overall thoughts on the conclusive battle between Goku and Jiren? What are your overall expectations for Dragon Ball Super episode 131, the final episode of Dragon Ball Super? What are your thoughts on the battle? And if you have any criticism for this episode, what would that be? Let me know in the comment section below. I do want to say, guys, thank you all so very much for watching, and once more, I also do want to say thank you all so very much for your continued support on the channel, and not only having to be here prior to Dragon Ball Super's inception, but also having to be here for the amazing ride that was of Dragon Ball Super, the ups, the downs. I will be live streaming next Saturday right after the episode in tribute to Dragon Ball Super together as a community, so make sure you guys are following me on Twitter to be notified of any further additional information that I will be providing for the live stream, alongside various other updates, and of course any additional news for the upcoming Dragon Ball movie, and of course for the manga chapter that I will be dropping tomorrow, so make sure you guys tune back in for that. Let me know your thoughts as to what you guys thought about this fight. Artistically speaking, it was a very well designed episode. Sumitomo's music was fantastic. It felt like a big fight feel in seeing everything Goku and Jiren were able to provide against each other in terms of having to display their feats and power. So it was an amazing episode in my opinion, which is of course subjective, so if you guys feel differently, let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you all so very much for watching once again. Tune back in for more, and I'll be seeing each and every single one of you guys for the final episode of Dragon Ball Super next week. Take it easy, guys. Cue my outro, bitch.